Welcome, everybody, to the Detroit Lions 2024 NFL Draft Q&A with Crunch Time. Me, Lukas Klotz. Booner will be joining us in a second. Feels like we honestly just went to bed, woke right up. And we're here. It's 8 a.m. We said we'd be here, and we're here. Lukas, how we feeling? Terrion Arnold is a Detroit Lion.
It doesn't feel really, I mean, I think you hit it right on the head. You wake up and we got right back into it. We woke up, showered, now we're right back to recording. And it does not feel real that Terrion Arnold is a Lion. I think especially if you look at that first half of the NFL draft, no one expected 14 straight offensive players. And for Terrion Arnold to fall into 24, let alone Quinyon Mitchell at 22, I think the Detroit Lions probably got the best pick that possible walking out of the draft for themselves.
It's wild. Absolutely wild night. I want to say thank you again to Scotty, Questionable Teas, Bookies, Bar and Grill, Elysium, Cannabis. We had a blast last night. I mean, we didn't get home till probably 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not including the adrenaline. And we did actually we got home at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to be here. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. We appreciate you. We're going to get into Q&A, so please get your questions ready. I just want to discuss really what happened yesterday and kind of preview a little bit of today. We're going to do a whole stream just talking about the second round later on. And, we'll do live breakdowns of every single draft pick. And, of course, the Lions picking. If they stay put, we assume Brad Holmes is probably not done moving around the NFL draft. But they do pick today. They traded their third-round pick yesterday, and they traded their other third-round pick for Carlton Davis. So at this point in time, they have that 61st pick. And then they don't pick again for almost 100 picks at 164, 201, 205, and 249. That's their remaining picks. So at 61, that's where it's going to get interesting. And we talked about it last night on the stream. Because we figured offensive lineman, wide receiver, edge. And now you really, Lukas, you got a pick in the second round. You're going to wait a little bit to that next pick, assuming Brad doesn't trade. So what position he addresses, I think, is probably going to be the point of discussion today.
Yeah, when you're looking at it, I'm now aligning with your guys' argument that we're making. The fact you don't have a third or fourth round pick, you have to go get that defensive end, in my opinion. You cannot trot out Marcus Davenport and James Houston as a rotation and want to be taken as far as seriously as far as defensive ends go. Aiden Hutchinson, I think an all-pro type of guy, but for him to reach that, he does need help. I think you have to go get that in the second round. I think we're going to see a run of wide receivers go here in the next 20 picks. So with that, looking up at the board, I don't see how there's any way you can pass up on defensive ends.
Yeah, if you're sitting there at 61 and Brad gets a trade offer to trade back and you're able to get a third or a fourth round pick, I think for Brad's sake, it would be worth it because then you could still address wide receiver or edge, unless he stays put and maybe Adisa Isaac's there, which I think we'd all be happy with.
Mohamed Kamara.
Offensive linemen are still on the board. I mean, JPJ and Zach Frazier are still there. Kool-Aid McKinstry is still there. Not that they need him, but he's still there. He'll be going in the second round. So there's some pretty good football players. That first round, there were some picks. It happens every single year, and we talked about it. There's always picks that you don't expect. Ricky Pearsall to the 49ers. He's a good player, though. Michael Penix, the Falcons taking him, even though they just signed a quarterback. But at the same time, he is 36 with an Achilles injury. So they're there's other things. But that draft, the drill draft yesterday, there's always going to be picks like that. And there's still some good players. So it's weird how the board just fell right in Brad's lap. I mean, you had Terrion Arnold and Quinyon Mitchell in the 20s available, which is something that none of us thought would happen.
Watu being selected before Dallas Turner, and that's at pick 15 to the Colts. Dallas Turner, what did he fall to? 17. That's another scary pick that happened is Minnesota trading back up to get him, especially Minnesota not really having – they didn't have to trade up to get JJ. Well, they did, but it was one pick, which they probably really didn't even have to do. It was more so protection. Nobody else got up there.
And here's I want to go get right to it. And we got Booner. So, Booner, feel free to join anytime. I know you're kind of backstage. We're going to have Booner in a second here. But I see Gage's question. And I think this is a good start the whole Q&A question. What up, Boone?
Boys, you guys want my hat?
Love it.
Thank
Looks
you.
great.
Thank you.
Well, here's Gage's question. He says, with the Bears and Vikings current roster, who would y'all say takes number 2 in the division? Or at least number 3. I think the Packers are number 2.
Yeah, I would say the Packers too, but if I'm looking at it, I think it's hard to argue not the Bears. I mean, there's so much stability, especially on the defensive side there, that the Vikings do not have. The Vikings have so much added defensive side, and then I agree that they have. Well, they have that, but they have a whole secondary linebacker core they need to address, interior as well. And I think both teams offensively are pretty set, but when you look around the most consistent talent that's going to be there, at least you're talking about 2023 or 2024, I think it's the Chicago Bears. I think there's less of a learning curve for Caleb compared to JJ, and I think that's pretty obvious. I don't think anybody would be appalled by that. What do you say, Booner?
I think the Bears, to be honest.
Think so?
It's a quarterback. Caleb Williams is way better than JJ McCarthy. That's a fact. By the way, I hate both of them now too. So no one can say I'm a JJ fan anymore. All right, just want to throw that out there. Just want to throw it out there. No, I would say the Chicago Bears. Honestly, they have. You just got Keenan Allen. You have DJ Moore. Like, that offense is very good, and they've stacked that defense up as well. And they paid a lot of guys to come in on that defense.
Roma Dunze now too, Boone.
Yeah, Roma Dunze. Like, that's if we're just gonna call a spade, it's a good football team now. It's a good football team now. We're gonna have some battles with them going forward. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, the Vikings. I'll stay on it too, guys. I think the Vikings had an amazing first round yesterday too. And I'll stand on that. It's you got your quarterback that you thought you were going to get at 5. You would have to trade up for at 5. By the way, my hat is crooked. I cannot figure it out, guys.
You're good, Boone.
But they got the quarterback you were supposed to get at 5. You got him at 10. You basically just had to move one spot, and then you had to sit there, and they had Dallas Turner fall right into their laps, and they traded up a couple picks, but they just had him fall right into the. But they did make 2 trades, which is kind of crazy in the first round.
I think it's easy to say that. Bias us, like, as much as we don't want to say, the Vikings probably had the best first round so far.
Yeah,
best draft so far, I'd say.
They had to spend to do it though. Like, they had to move up twice to be able to get that done, which is interesting. But I think they got 2 of the guys that they were looking to get.
Yeah, the Vikings trading up with the Jaguars and taking Dallas Turner was. That was shocking. The fact that he even fell was shocking, and they went out and got him, which is it was a great selection. The Bears, I think, are the 3rd best team, and I think is depending on Matt Eberflus's future. I think he's probably got a year left, and they're going to get another coach in there, depending on who that is. Preferably, if I'm a Bears fan, you're going all
fire him today.
Yeah, and if they get an offensive coach, that team could easily be the 2nd best team contending for the NFC North in 2 years. So I believe.
Real quick before we move on from it, Felix, I want to get your reaction. I think the Vikings had the best first round, but I don't really think that moves the needle when it talks about matching up with the Detroit Lions. Because J.J. McCarthy, I really don't think anybody is scared of, especially early on in his career. And Dallas Turner, while I do respect him as a player, he's going up against Penei Sewell. Dallas Turner is not going to be able to move Penei Sewell an inch behind the line of scrimmage. So I think they needed to take that pick. But when you look at how does that translate against playing against the Detroit Lions, I don't see much of an impact. I think Roma Dunze, I think the fact that they had him as a wide receiver 3 in that situation, you look at the Lions secondary, even though they added Terrion Arnold, I think he's going to be more of a matchup problem than Dallas Turner ever will for the Lions.
Yeah. And the Cardinals, too. They got Darius Robinson and Marvin Harrison Jr. It's a pretty good first round for them.
That is a great first round, yeah.
So, a lot of
by the way, did you guys talk a little bit about the Lions thing at all yet? Or are we going to
a little bit? We touched on it.
Did you guys watch the Brad Holmes press conference last night?
Yeah, I did.
He came out and said that he was looking in the late teens. They were looking to get Terrion Arnold, and he ended up waiting until 24 and being able to even wait longer to get him. So I thought that was pretty shocking. And that he said that, and I know he usually says this about his guys because it's just his guys. But he said he had Terrion as CB number 1, and there was a large gap into his second guy, into the next corner with Quinn.
It's wild.
So he got his guy
even between Quinn and Boone.
Yeah, he said he said there's like a line and then a gap and then the next guy. So he got his guy that he wanted, which is unbelievable at 24.
Very different to bring this situation up, but when you talk about Brad still getting the guy he wanted, it reminds me of the clip that was shown on the Lions YouTube channel when they were drafting Amon-Ra St. Brown and they needed a wide receiver. And they're like, just be patient, be patient, be patient. And they probably could have traded up and got Terrion Arnold, but the fact that they waited and only traded up 5 spots for less draft capital and still got him, that's Brad now just being a GM and understanding. Like early on, it probably was a little more worrying to wait on guys.
Yeah.
But now he's got more experience. He's like, okay, I've been in this situation before. Let the board play out. We'll still be able to get him. And they got him, only trading up 5 picks, which is unbelievable. We got some more questions here. I want to start with Adam Baydoun. Shout out to Adam, by the way. He says first round losers.
First round losers. To me. The Atlanta Falcons. I think with the Atlanta Falcons.
Arthur Blank's reaction.
I think that GM, I think he just got there. I don't even know who. I couldn't name it off the top of my head. I think he's gone after a year. There's zero way. And again, me and Lucas talked about this last night after the show. Whether Michael Penix ends up being good or not, you can't pay a guy like Kirk Cousins the money you did and then turn around in a month and draft a quarterback at 8th overall. That's just not the move you do. You don't do that. If you knew you're going to go quarterback, you don't bring Kirk Cousins in and make that move. That's just not that's not smart. That's not anything in the football that you do. If you're going to pay a quarterback like you did Kirk Cousins, you go get him, add a Roma Dunze. Go get some defense, stack the defense up. If anything, get him an offensive lineman and show him, hey, we just paid you this money. We want you to go out there and win a Super Bowl. And you went quarterback at 8th overall. That was one of the most shocking moves I think I've ever seen in an NFL draft. And again, Michael Penix, I think a lot of us were high on Michael Penix. That was nuts.
Not at 8.
That was just absolutely nuts. And even if he ends up being good, I think Gentry said when Kirk Cousins' contract is up with Atlanta, he's 28 years old. So it's an unbelievable. I cannot believe. I think they are the biggest losers. If I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan, I would be so mad waking up this morning. I would be furious. You had a top 10 pick. You could have got Roma Dunze, and you went and got Michael Penix when you have Kirk Cousins. That's
yes,
insane.
Okay. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I don't think the Falcons messed up as bad as people thought they did.
Connect the dots for us then.
Yeah,
okay.
We would love to know, I think.
It's a shocking pick. Like, I completely understand that. But the more I thought about it, because initially I was in the same boat. Like last night, I'm like, oh, Michael Penix, that's odd. Dallas Turner's on the board. You should take Dallas Turner. But we had Mo Hassan on. Played in the NFL, USC quarterback, Vanderbilt quarterback. Lukas Klotz, this guy. And he thinks Michael Penix is the second best quarterback in the class. And there's a lot that do believe that Michael Penix is one of the best quarterbacks. I think if you're Atlanta and you have Kirk Cousins, torn ACL, Achilles, he's 36 years old. They have Taylor Heineke as their backup, which is a solid backup. But
very fine backup quarterback.
To develop a potential franchise quarterback, I don't really care about the age because I feel that way when we talk about Hendon Hooker. Like the age really doesn't scare me because if he plays for 10 plus years, you get your money's worth. I like Penix a lot, and if he is who the Falcons believe he is, and I like him a lot, they got a franchise quarterback after Kirk Cousins, and maybe they feel like having that. If Michael Penix is their guy, is worth any other defensive player that can come help them now, and I get
the defensive player.
I get the concerns though when people say they have a chance to win the division. Why wouldn't you take a player that can help? I understand that, but if you think Michael Penix is a franchise quarterback, you pull the trigger. Like I don't hate it, and if they're going to be really good this year, so they're not going to be picking top 10, so. It's going to be harder to get your franchise quarterback next year or the year prior.
You paid Kirk Cousins $125 million over the next 4 years. You paid him $45 million a year for 4 seasons, and then you went Michael. Like, I get your point. Like maybe you don't go defense. At least get him an offensive lineman with all of these high level tackles. At least get him a wide receiver.
Well, they don't need. That's to Jeff's point. I think a little bit like if you look at the Falcons right now offensively, they don't need much. So now if you take the quarterback of the future and you just start Raheem Morris, defensive minded head coach, new GM, they could very well be going like how they used to develop quarterbacks, and they're like, all right, we're going to just start adding defense for the next year. So that time when it is Michael Penix's turn, just take the quarterback. Drake May's in his prime. Kyle Pitts is in his prime. Bijan Robinson in his prime. Oh, and they have a good defense to go with it. And they has time to sit and learn behind Kirk Cousins, who's a guy to sit and learn as well a little bit. Kirk Cousins is going to be this guy with teach him how to make all these crazy throws. He's going to teach him how to develop and do what he did. Kirk Cousins is a guy that isn't really elite at anything, but he's good at a lot of things. With Michael Penix, I think he does have a high ceiling, but that floor is a concern. If you let him sit behind Kirk Cousins, that's how NFL used to work as far as developing quarterbacks. So I don't think it's crazy to see that approach. I think it's surprising to see the pick go, but as far as the thinking behind it, I think it's good for them long term.
Klotz, I don't want to sit here and say that I like that wide receiver room isn't like anything special.
I think if Drake London's there, I think that's in good hands, especially considering the pieces they already have with Kyle Pitts, Tyler Algier, Bijan Robinson. That's going to be a run first team. It's always going to be.
Outside of that, they have Darnell Mooney and Rondell Moore. They don't have another dude.
I think if you're a run first team
with
with Rondell Moore, Darnell Mooney are both solid. They'll get you
solid. But if you want to win a Super Bowl, you draft Rome Odunze. Now you have a legit offense.
I just don't think. I think even Atlanta knows they're not in a position to win a Super Bowl. They have a first-year head coach.
Then why would they sign a quarterback to $125 million if they don't feel like they can win a Super Bowl with them? I disagree. I think
not
$45 million, but I think $45 million a year. You're sitting there thinking you can win a Super Bowl with them. You go get your guy a weapon. I get the Michael Penix thing, but that was just unbelievable to me.
Yeah, it was shocking.
That was unbelievable.
I will say it was shocking. I'm not going to act like it was expected. I don't want, but I kind of understand it in a way. I get like he doesn't help you now, but that's kind of what teams sometimes like to do. We're a team that can contend for our division right now, but we're also kind of planning for the future. Life after Kirk. I get you're right, Booner. They signed him to a 4-year deal, but he is 36 with coming off an Achilles injury. So again, if he goes down, or maybe the next year or two he doesn't age like people think he will, you still have Michael Penix. I don't know, Michael Penix. But anyway, I think another shocking pick I'll bring up, Amarius Mims of the Bengals. Yeah. That's another one. I was a little okay. I mean, they need offensive line. They were going to address offensive line or their defensive line, maybe Brian Thomas Jr., but they went with Amarius Mims with Graham Barton still on the board, and they like him a lot. So there you go.
I think that's just a classic reaching for ceiling pick. Amarius Mims played damn near 8 games in college. I understand that that's what you want to develop into being your left tackle, but I think just going back to Booner's point with the Falcons, the Cincinnati Bengals are without a doubt in Super Bowl contention mode. They're a team that can go out next year and win a Super Bowl. So Amarius Mims, without a doubt, is going to have to develop. And if that's what you want, developing while you're trying to win a Super Bowl with Joe Burrow, I don't think that's the safest option to do. You brought it up, Graham Barton sitting there. I think there's going to be a lot of people when we look back at this draft going, how did you pick Amarius Mims instead of Graham Barton?
Yeah, wasn't Troy Fautanu still on the board as well? Didn't he go in the 20s?
I can look for you, Boone. You might be right.
Troy Fautanu, he went at 20. Yes, he was on the board, but he's projected to be a guard. Same with Barton. Barton's a center guard. And I think so tackles, like the next tackle that was drafted after Amarius Mims was Jordan Morgan.
Shout out
to the Packers, right?
And then you had Tyler Guyton. So they must have felt like Amarius Mims was the best tackle available.
A lot of offensive linemen yesterday. A bunch of offensive linemen.
A lot of offensive players, Boone, too. I mean, like you talked about a lot. I mean, how many picks for offensive players?
14.
Yeah, 14.
Why? I mean, Dan Campbell said it, offensive draft, and he was right. All right, we got some more questions here. Michael, shout out to Michael, by the way. He says, what is each of your dream scenarios for tonight? Most ideal scenarios.
If I'm looking at it, go ahead, Boone.
I just have one. I just want Brad Holmes to make some moves. I just hope he doesn't just stay at 61 and then that's the only play. Because tonight's the 2nd and 3rd round, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, you don't have a 3rd round pick. You gave it up yesterday to go get Terrion, I believe. So I would love for him to just find a way to get back into the 2nd and 3rd round, keep 61 and move around some assets to move back into the 2nd or 3rd round and go add another player. Because I would love to see them get a wide receiver and a defensive end. Those would be the two kind of positions tonight I'm looking for. I don't know if we have one pick, either or, but I just would love, fellas. I don't know where you stand on it. I would just love for him to find a way to get back into the first. I don't know if he could use like this one of the second fourths next year and then third next year or whatever he needs to do it. But he usually finds a way. It's just as the years go on now, he's starting to lose capital and you don't have as much as you've had in the back or in the past. So I would love to see that though.
I think the fact that they went up in the first round, they gave up the assets in the third round, just keep going quality over quantity compared to going back to what Jeff said. I think my dream situation is even if you have to move up a little bit somehow, somewhere in the second round, you go up and you get Adisa Isaac. Because if you look at this roster, if you go and you say that we got Terrion Arnold and Quinyon or Adisa Isaac in the first 2 rounds, this defense is dramatically improved, especially looking into the future. So I know I'm the one out of everybody that wanted a wide receiver, but sitting how the draft is, the fact that they just lost a 3rd round pick, go up and get an Adisa Isaac, in my opinion.
I'm going to go a little different route. I think edge is still important, but with the offensive linemen still on the board, the interior offensive linemen, I think my ideal scenario, potentially you even trade back, you get an extra 3rd or 4th round pick. Maybe 4th round pick's more realistic, but you get some more capital. And maybe you take a Cooper Beebe or some interior offensive lineman. I think there's going to be more available, or wide receiver. Edge is something that if you're going to take one, it would be at 61 or in the first round, but things change now that 61 is their only pick and they have a pick 100 picks later. So instead of an edge at this point, you're just kind of accepting, hey, Brad Holmes got his guy. Maybe edge won't be something they're able to address earlier this year. I'll go offensive lineman. It would be my ideal pick, or wide receiver. So trade back and maybe get one of those 2 positions.
Fellas.
Or both.
They got Marcus Davenport and James Houston
I know.
right now.
I know.
They have the best offensive line in football.
But that's how I've always felt about the depth in this class. Unless it's Adisa Isaac, but he could go 15 picks from.
I think there's probably 3 or 4 that you could go there that maybe you're not like the most comfortable with starting day one, but it's putting you in a better position defensively. I think if you're sitting at 61 with the interior guys, I mean, that's the guy that's going to have to develop. You can take one of the guys next year if you really need it.
This is what, first of all, I don't think Brad Holmes is going to take a guy that's going to need to develop, so I don't think you have to worry about that.
Well, I'm saying situationally, like they're not.
He might not. He probably doesn't even care. Like he's not looking at the depth chart, going, "Hey, we need to get an edge here tonight, boys. We need a lot." That's the last thing Brad's doing. He said in his press conference last night. Someone asked him, like, "I thought you don't draft for position depth," and he said, "No, I don't." And then the reason why we got Terrion Arnold last night wasn't because we needed a corner. That just happened. It just happened to be that way and work out that way. We got the best football player that was available in the first round left there, Terrion Arnold. So I think tonight we might not even see a wide receiver, a defensive edge, or offensive lineman. You might see a safety go off the board tonight. You might see anything come off the board tonight. He's just going to go out and get a football player, boys. That's just what it is. I'm just going to be frank with you, boys. If I know my guy Brad Holmes, like I know my guy Brad Holmes, he doesn't care about anything like that. He does not care. And Adisa Isaac too. He might be the best player available, and he's the best football dude. And we got to go get him. And same with like Jackson Powers Johnson still on the board, Zach Frazier. So if these guys start to drop, hey, these might just be the best football players, and they're falling, boys.
I just look at the depth. I mean, it's already hard enough in the NFL to have depth at offensive line, and Kevin Zeitler, you're one injury away from pretty scary situation there. I mean,
the man does not care about depth, Jeff Iafrate.
Well, we all say that until you're in an NFC Championship game and you got Colby out there.
We do, but again, he said it last night. He said it last night. I just listen to the man and then I report. Yeah.
And again, I get what he said, but my opinion, they should go offensive linemen. I think that this is the depth. And speaking of the players that will be available, there's going to be some good football players and offensive linemen that you could probably argue will be the best available. So there you go.
I don't hate what you said too, to trade back and add more assets. Like that's just all I want to do is just find a way to add another pick in these next 2 rounds. Just find a way. If you have to move out of 61 and there's a lot of players available and you can move back to add another one, Do it. I'm in for it. Add
That's what I
another
was
pick.
about to ask. So if they move back, let's say they trade back from 61 and they get 2 third-round picks, you're completely comfortable with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's enough. There's a lot of players here. Like if you just look at the best available, there's a ton of dudes that are going to be available past 61. So I mean, I wouldn't sit here and be mad because what 61's at the very end basically of the third or the second round. So if you trade back, add a third round pick, and somehow still get into the you're at early third, and you could still get a guy that you like, I'm in on it. Then you can get that defensive end that you want, Klotzy. It might not be a decent Isaac, but you can get your defensive end that you want, a Mohamed Kamara, say he's still there, and then we can get that offensive lineman, someone that maybe falls a little bit into that third round, that you could snag someone. Cooper Beebe. That you know what, boys, we might have a little situation of Terrion Arnold, Mohamed Kamara, Cooper Bebe. We might have some stuff that we talked about might end up working out for us over here.
We'll get to we got Lions Troll. He asked his question. He says, "What's the biggest defensive surprise pick or fallback?"
Chop Robinson, 21st overall to the Miami Dolphins. That is disgusting. That is disgusting. They could have traded back if they wanted to do that. I mean, we posted on our social media, but that caught me by surprise. I thought they should have. We with Terrion on the board, losing Xavier Howard. I thought cornerback for them if they were going to go defense made the most sense, but they went with Chop Robinson. They made the reach of the draft, in my opinion. It's going to make them fall flat on their face. That looks like a Mike McDaniel's defensive pick, and that's not a shot at Mike McDaniel. They should have went offense if they were going to go Chop Robinson at that point.
Yeah, I mean, they released Emmanuel Ogbah. Here comes Chop Robinson. I mean, I probably would have went corner as well if I'm the Dolphins. Like that secondary, especially you look at their division: Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, and now I mean Drake May. You don't have to worry about it for probably a year, but still, just the AFC. I mean, that secondary it's not good. So maybe they felt like, hey, if Chop Robinson can be that top tier level pass rusher, which that's all I think he will be, and I don't think you can play him all 3 downs initially, then that's their pick. But I would have went in the secondary, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I'm two guys. I'm just going to throw this out there on the defense. The fact Cooper DeJean and Kool-Aid McKinstry both fell out of the first, I'm a little shocked. And I know Kool-Aid was supposed to be a back end of the first, so that could have happened. But like Cooper DeJean, the reports earlier this week, and everyone's talking about, was he did his pro day last week coming off that injury, and everyone loved him, and he dominated at his pro day. And then you start seeing him getting mocked in the top 20 throughout the week, all the way up until last night. And he doesn't even go in the first round. I thought that was shocking.
Wild.
I thought like Nate Wiggins going before Cooper DeJean was kind of wild to me. I'm very shocked by that. And if any surprise on defense is the whole class is falling. You had only 9 defensive players in the top 32 picks. That's crazy. That is unbelievable.
I think with the DeJean thing, Booner, it just shows you that the NFL just views him as a safety, in my opinion. Because I think if they did view him as a corner, especially given the size and athleticism, how he's tested, he would have been picked over Nate Wiggins at 30, like you said, every day of the week. But he's obviously, I think, going to be moved to safety like most people expected.
We have this one, Ed O'Neill. It was basically, what we'll answer is his question here. Became a member for 1 month. So, Eduardo, we appreciate you a ton. He says, most corners take 2 to 3 years to figure it out. Any chances Arnold is the exception. I'm not a fan of losing that third. Hutch still needs help. And I will say, for the corner point, it is kind of funny because when we talk about the cornerback class, we expected the run on corners to go in the teens. They didn't go to the 20s. So it kind of tells you how NFL GMs felt about the corner class. Not saying it was bad, but the run on corners were it was a little bit longer than we expected. Doesn't mean they won't be good players. I don't think it'll be 2 to 3 years for these guys. I think it'll be 1 to 2 years. I think Terrion Arnold will be your CB2 year 1 and potentially he will be your CB1 the following year. Like he's going to be he played in the SEC. He played really well. Matched up with NFL wideouts, guys that are going to be drafted. I don't think it'll be 2 to 3 years. I get losing the third, but again, you're getting a quality player, so I'm not mad at it. But I do understand Hutch still needs some help. I mean, that's a very obvious thing. I think that'll be more, if they don't address it today, more of a NFL trade deadline move. You go get an edge.
Yeah, and in the Terrion situation too, Brad talked about it last night about how like he saw him play early in the season this year, and he saw him play in 2022. And you think a guy like that, and the way he broke it down was, you think a guy like that at his level, the way he was playing, like, oh, he can't get that much better. He can get a little better. And Brad said that he just keeps getting better. And his ceiling, and one of the big reasons they loved him too, is because his ceiling is so high. So I'm with
one upside.
What was that,
Quarterback one upside.
Yeah. So when you have that, and you come in working with Carlton Davis, and you work with AG, and I think there's going to be a good opportunity for him to go in, and he's gonna be playing right away. I mean, it's going to be like the thing with Brian Branch last year. Like, you want him to compete, and you're going to hope, and just like we knew Brian Branch was a dog last year, we know Terrion Arnold's a dog, and we hope when training camp comes around, at least to me, that by the time week 1 comes around, we're talking about him being on the field, and he's one of those guys from Alabama, just like all the Alabama guys that we've taken, where it's, hey, we can't take him off the field. We cannot take this guy off the field. Like, he has to be out there. So, and then by the end of the season, by the time the playoffs come around, if Brad is right and the way he kind of went about looking at him, and the fact that he has that ceiling where he's going to be going up and getting better every week, he could be your CB1 by next year. And to have him and then a Carlton Davis, think about the secondary, fellas. If Terrion ends up being who we think Terrion can be, and then you have Carlton Davis on the other side, and you have Amik Robertson coming, being that third guy, and then you have the safety room that you have with Kirby, Brian Branch, Iffy. That's a great secondary. Shall we say it might be one of the top secondaries, and I'm not saying it is right now, but I'm saying if that potential and it ends up being what you think it is, could be one of the best in the NFC, just based off the guys you have.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Boone. I think Terrion, I think year 2, he's definitely going to be in that area where he could be your CB1. But early on, and I think it's just for any corner, especially that goes to the NFC North, there's definitely going to be some growing pains. You're talking about him. He's going to want to be your cornerback too. Well, okay, that means covering Jordan Addison. That means covering DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, or Keenan Allen, and any of those Packers wide receivers. So I think any corner that's entering the NFC North right now is definitely going to have some growing pains. But I think long-term, that's going to help out because you're getting thrown to the wolves. And you got to find a way to figure it out. And I think the cornerback position with a guy like Terrion Arnold, with the pedigree he has playing at Alabama, he's going to be able to figure it out a lot quicker than the other cornerbacks in this draft. So early on, I do expect some growing pains. But as you see him develop, just like you were saying, Booner, Brad Holmes watched it at Alabama. Even this year, he's just going to get better and better and better. And he is going to be a guy that I think when you look back, Terrion Arnold, then you have Carlton Davis. Then you have Amik Robertson. They're probably going to add some more depth, whether it's through the draft or free agency still in the cornerback room. They have Emmanuel Mosley. This is going to be one of the more solid, not best, but one of the more solid defensive back rooms in the NFL, in my opinion, this year.
Do you guys see that? I think Al Carson put it out on X, and it was a funny graph. It was not funny. It was a graphic, but it was a tweet. And he said it was just kind of comparing where Terrion Arnold was ranked among other people that cover the draft, like Matt Miller. He was Matt Miller's 8th best prospect, CB1. Also, Daniel Jeremiah, he was the 9th best ranked prospect, CB1. Wow. Nate Trice, 17th ranked prospect, but CB1. See how you see a theme here.
Yep.
Zerline, 20th ranked prospect, CB2. Mel Kiper, 21st ranked prospect, CB3. So, hey,
who did Kiper have at 2? Probably Wiggins.
Yeah, probably.
Listen, I like Nate Wiggins. I like what he can do at the next level.
So, yeah, I mean, it tells you how most people felt about him, CB1. But, yeah, we'll get to the next question here. Tailgate Gang. Lucas, I don't understand all you guys want a wide receiver. We don't need a wide receiver. We need defense. Why would you initially want a wide receiver?
Because it kind of goes back to, I know it's different positions, but when you look at what Atlanta did with the quarterback position, them taking a quarterback now allows them to strictly focus on defense. If the Lions took a wide receiver in round 1, which even listening to Brad, sounds like that was a possibility as well because he's talking about trying to trade up. And when you got Terrion, that's not what they're expecting. They're expecting to get a different player at a different position. So I do think that was a possibility, but it's one of those things where I think it helps you in the future. It allows you to focus on what you need to now and a little bit differently. I think it allows you to zone in on the weaknesses because now you realize that offensively, we don't have to think about a damn thing. They could get offensive line depth as well. But wide receiver, I think it allows you to exploit the weaknesses of the other teams around the NFC and allows you to make what you do better for long term.
And we hear we got some more. What do you think about that wide receiver stuff?
I don't think I feel like I'm very repetitive with this, and I hate to be repetitive. I just think if there's a dude there that they love, they're just going to take him. I don't think they care if they already have wide receivers, if they need something else. I just think like if they love Roman Wilson, he's had multiple meetings with them, and he's sitting there at 61. I wouldn't be shocked if Roman Wilson is the pick. I don't think you can ever have too many any weapons, especially this offense that you have. It's a top 5 offense in the NFL. You have to keep adding to it. You did lose Josh Reynolds, so to say we don't need a wide receiver, I think that's a little off. I still think you can add a weapon and feel very comfortable. I just don't. I'm going to be repetitive the next 24 hours as we go through this draft, especially tonight as we're breaking it down. Is I just don't think I'm not looking at it in the eyes of needs, to be honest, guys. I'm not. It was the same thing yesterday. I mean, you guys, we've been talking about this for weeks. It's just how I've been doing it. So I get it. It isn't like initially, oh, we need different positions. Wide receiver isn't a big need, but some of us would have been content even last night if they ended up getting a wide receiver. We wouldn't have been throwing our the table or anything.
Well, here's Johnny says Amik Robertson to play some slot, Branch to play some safety. I mean, Amik Robertson, I think he's been an outside corner, even though he's 5'9", but he played. I don't know how much slot he played with the Raiders. You might know more than me, Lucas, about that.
Not much. They had like Nate Hobb. They had a good, not good, but they had a rotation going at slot, and Amik just stand outside for the most part.
And then they did talk about Branch playing more safety, but I think this year it depends. I mean, what they do if they draft a safety, how high are they drafting a safety? Put some competition for Kirby Joseph and Iffy. So we'll see.
There's still some free agents out there too. Quandre
there
Diggs is a guy that's just sitting there, and I'm sure he wants to play some football.
Yeah. Well, big word says, is this the first draft that Brad Holmes didn't win a trade based on the Fitzgerald Spielberger value chart? Yeah, the trade thing, and this is where like the trade to me, I don't look too much into who won what trade. If Terrion Arnold ends up being a CB1, who cares? No one's going to look back. It's not the same because trading up for quarterbacks is a lot different how it affects your franchise. I understand that, but when people give up a bunch of assets for a trade up to go get a quarterback and he works out, no one remembers what the trade looked like. And I think that's similar for any position. If Terrion Arnold 5 spots, I don't care what he gave up, and I don't think it was.
What was the end trade? You gave up a third, got back a 7th.
Yeah, basically they gave up their third, moved up 5 spots, and got a 7th back.
I mean, I think outside of Caleb Williams, obviously, if there was a pick that was made inside the NFC North last night that scared the other teams, I think it is Terrion Arnold compared to what we talked about, the Dallas Turners, the J.J. McCarthys, the Jordan Morgans of the world. I think when teams after they watch Caleb Williams go, they go, damn, Detroit somehow landed Terrion Arnold 24th overall. I think the value there, as far as the trade, I don't care what the trade picks were. The value and who you're getting with that trade is sky high.
Yeah. Casey Gibson, how do y'all feel about Bo Nix going to Denver? Did you guys see that the report that came out after he was drafted, how they sent Bo Nix home with like a whole playbook and they quizzed him the next day or two and he aced it and they watched him throw and they spent a lot of time with Bo Nix and they just, again, I said this yesterday on stream, like he's exactly what they're looking for. Could they have traded back? Yeah, probably. Traded back and, picked up some picks and maybe got him. But again, it goes back to that same point. If they are in love with Bo Nix, you just take them. You just take them. And the rest will figure itself out. Especially if they believe that he is a franchise guy. They wouldn't draft him if they didn't believe it. So I'm not as disgusted with that pick as other people are. I get the whole how many quarterbacks will actually work out. I don't know. Bo Nix, although I like the intangibles, the accuracy, I think he fits what Sean Payton wants. Denver's a tough situation to go to as it is. So I don't know. But I'm not disgusted by the pick or anything like that. I think it makes sense for him.
I think he has a better chance of being successful in Denver than some of us think. Like when he went from Auburn to Oregon, that was kind of a situation where like when he was at Auburn, he was supposed to be the guy. And I think he still put up some numbers, and then him having to leave and then move to go to Oregon and kind of he showed a little adversity and said, hey, I'm going to still go there. And he was competing for a Heisman Trophy last year. And he was out there. He was playing good football. And he's, to me, I think you might have said it last night, Jeff. He's just like a trustworthy guy. they gave him the playbook, they tested him, and he passed everything and did everything they needed to. Like, he's a guy that could go in there. I don't know if he's going to be great. It's just one of those situations that seemed like a little bit of a reach that early. Like, you could have traded back, and no other team was probably going to go Bo Nix. They just probably wanted to make sure they got their guy. But I just wouldn't be. I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up playing in there and actually for a few years being a capable starter there for the Broncos.
Fellas, and I know it's the obvious argument here, but there were 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 picks. I'm going to go on the argument that only 2 of them are going to work out. I'll give you maybe 3. But if 3 of them are going to work out, Bo Nix, in my opinion, is not going to be one of them. If I'm the Atlanta Falcons GM, I'm sitting more confident knowing that I think Michael Penix has a better chance of panning out than Bo Nix. At the end of the day, if you're a GM, you're probably going to keep your job that way. So if they want to reach on Bo Nix, that's fine. He's not going to be a quarterback that I think has success, especially when you're in a division with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. That's not very ideal whatsoever. So it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out, but it was a reach for a quarterback, and I think that's the first thing how you lose your job if you're an NFL GM.
Good thing Bo Nix threw a lot of passes there in college.
He did, but
he's
before Oregon, they weren't looking very good.
He knows what it's like to get into some passing battles.
Yeah, shootouts, a lot of them.
And the good thing is he doesn't have to play defense against Patrick Mahomes and those guys. So,
well, let's see here. Jesse Adams, sorry if I missed this, but who do you think they will take at 61? I say we go O-line, D-line, then wide receiver. That's my thoughts. What do you guys think? Yeah, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. Booner, and I get it, like Brad Holmes, BPA, but that's, to me, it's a little boring. All right, who I think, who knows if it'll happen. Offensive lineman, maybe a defensive lineman. Lucas kind of talked about that. D size, I wouldn't be mad, but I'd prefer they trade back. They pick up some extra capital, maybe address offensive line and wide receiver. That's where I'm at. If you get an edge, cool, great. I wouldn't be mad at it at all. But there's still some good offensive linemen on the board, man, which is crazy. I thought a lot more interior guys would go in the first round. So there's some dudes there at offensive line.
Does it turn into a situation here? I'm just looking at the draft board, fellas, the available with that. Does defense just start going now? Is that what's going to happen here? Like, finally,
I don't think so, Boone. Because if you look to Jeff's point, offensive lineman, a lot of the best play available is the next up, in my opinion, is wide receiver. I mean, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of wide receivers go here, and then even
Donnie, Matt Ladd.
If it is defensive, it's going to be cornerbacks and then linebackers at this point.
Mikey Sanders still available.
Yeah, Mikey. Like, even guys like Chris Jenkins are still on the board. Braden Fisk, guys of those like. So it's going to be interesting. There's still a lot of good players.
Trezon Newton.
Junior Colson sitting there. Like, there's some guys, fellas. Jackson Powers, John. There are actually, there's a lot of dudes available here. There's a lot of dudes available.
And a lot of offensive, too. Which I think, for what I want the Lions to do at 61, I think that works out again.
I'm interested to see who falls to 61. We thought we knew who was going to fall to 29, who was going to fall, and who was going to go last night. We could see some of these big time names just fall to 61, and you're sitting there and you get you end up. Imagine if, say, Jackson Powers Johnson just keeps falling. I don't think it'll happen, or Zach Frazier. Imagine if there was a player that fell to 61 that you sat there and you could have got, that we all had mocked at one point to 29. That would be wild. That would be crazy. Mikey Sanders, though. What if Mikey falls to 61?
Yeah, that'd be. I wouldn't be mad at that at all.
Boosted up your secondary. Now you have a guy. Now you can. I'm just throwing ideas out there, guys. I'm throwing ideas out there. Probably unrealistic, but just throwing them out there.
You would assume that Mikey goes like pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If you take him at 61, I'm not mad at all.
There's going to be guys who fall at 61 who we're going to be absolutely shocked about, just like last night. There's going to be guys available.
Oh, I see this one, Craig Jones. So does Jeff think Brown was corny for chanting golf?
Great question. Great question,
when
Craig.
Did he chant golf? It was so much
up the draft.
He walked out there to open the draft up, and he said, "I have one thing to say, fellas," and then started chanting Jared Goff to the people.
Oh, well,
great video! I could send it. I could send it to you, and we could play it on here.
I couldn't hear it because a lot was going on at bookies. But yeah, I have no problem with that. The whole thing was just about, as the picks announced for Caleb Williams. That was the thing. I was like, come on, whatever. But chanting Goff in general, yeah, go ahead. The Detroit was I mean, they shut down the entryway. Like, there's no more people allowed to come down to the draft to watch.
that video of Terrion looking into the crowd and just being able to actually have the mic to himself and just like being able to take in the moment shows that I think that was probably one of it's up there with the Nashville draft is probably the most ecstatic drafts in NFL history, in my opinion, as far as just the in-person experience.
They
the crazy
showed out.
thing is too, like we went into the draft for a little bit. They didn't even scan our ticket. We just walked in. Or did you guys scan yours?
Bro, and they were handing out free money, I guess. Did you guys hear about that?
Yeah, $100
They're
gift
just
cards
handing
to
out
NFL.
$100 gift card you can go cash out on NFL merch.
Go get jerseys. That's unbelievable.
I'm heading down there today, I think, boys.
Yeah, there was a couple 100,000 people there, which hey, that's how you show up Detroit. And I know,
They
I mean,
broke
with
the
all
record.
with all the publicity, I mean, the McAfee, NFL Network, ESPN, all the networks down there, we were down there. It's great for the city. It was incredible. I mean, we walked around early in the day, but as the day went on, I mean, that city, it was turned up. And it was from all over the country. I mean, we met people from New Mexico. Shout out to all you people that tune in and watch us. It was awesome. New Mexico, New York.
Uncle Jay flew out from New York.
Iowa, St. Louis. I mean, it was
everywhere.
They knew who they are. It was great.
I was thinking about it last night on my drive home about all the different states of people who flew in to watch it and came to our show. Unbelievable. I felt like half of the country around the country was represented there.
Hey, real quick, fellas, because I think this does, especially if you're Brad Holmes, knowing you're going to be here next year. Do you think the fact that Steve Wilds brought this up, we have 10 picks so far next year, 2 4s, 2 6, 2 7s. Do you think that this kind of changes his strategy where we're talking about depth right now? But he's like, all right, we're in a win now mode. I feel like our depth is okay because I know you don't want Kevin Zeitler being hurt and then you don't have any options in the NFC Championship game. But that's very similar to what they were last year. Yodi was out there in the NFC Championship game and the defense was much worse. So do you think that kind of impacts it, or is like, all right, we're not going to be trading back here in the second round. We could even be moving up more because we have a lot of depth pieces that we could go next year.
They do got Booner. They do got some capital next year, though, too. So
they do. That's why I think they make a move tonight. You have 2 4s, you have 2 6, 2 7. If that's the actual board for next year, and I didn't realize that, you can make moves tonight, fellas. Brad's going to be active.
Yeah.
We know Brad doesn't just only trade up in the first round. What did he do last year? He traded back in for Brian Branch.
Yep.
He makes trades. He loves to move around. He loves to be active. He loves to be on the phone. He's going to add more capital. He's going to move up. He's going to do this, man, especially day 2, fellas. This is where Brad really starts cooking. Because we talk about Brad all the time. What is Brad good at? What are the things that he does? He got Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's gotten Kirby Joseph in late rounds. He knows how to find guys in the late rounds. That man is going to be active tonight, trading up, trading back, moving around, getting a guy. That's where I can't wait for tonight as well. I feel like tonight's like almost like the first round again.
That's how it feels with Brad. He just the guy is just he's a savant. So when you watch, it doesn't matter what round it is. I'm excited.
There's no Giovanni Tavais with Brad Holmes. Okay. You don't have to worry about getting excited and you see the linebacker out of Hawaii being taken. There's none of that. You don't have to worry about it because in prior years, I would honestly not even want to watch. I would watch, but it's like we're looking at guys that will never reach what your expectations are. But now with Brad, it's like, okay, all these guys that are being drafted are most likely going to usurp what your expectations are, even if they're already sky high.
The worst with Brad is a Josh Pascal, maybe.
Levi Onzarike.
Levi
Onzarike.
Levi's worse.
Well, so like this isn't like a crazy bad thing. I mean, somehow, some way, that man still has. These guys are sitting there and they trust him a little bit because they haven't gone out and addressed that other side as much as we thought. So maybe there's something. Maybe there's something. I guess they have DJ. Yeah, I guess they've boosted up this line a little bit. Yeah. Maybe I could walk that one back a little, huh, boys?
Walk it back, dude.
You know, it's funny you mentioned it, Lucas, about
a long week.
The Jelani Tavai days. I mean, that I never tuned in. I tuned into the first round always, but with those GMs, prior Lions GMs, that would be to me one of those things where you're just checking your phone. You're just seeing who the pick was. Like I'm not with Brad Holmes. Obviously, it's our job, but even if we weren't doing this, I'd be watching it all because it's Brad Holmes. Like you just don't know what he's going to do. He makes it so much fun.
Yeah, and even like when the Lions were good and they were sitting in the first round and they were taking Laken Tomlinson out of Duke, 28th overall. Yep, all right, that's all I need to see. Because you knew like they weren't going anywhere when they were all right and they were slightly above 500 and they take Gerard Davis, 16th overall. All right, don't need to watch any more of this because you just knew it was the same old lines. They were repeating the same cycle.
Hey,
but it's
Tease
different now.
Tabor. Tease
Tease-
Tabor.
Tease Tabor was ass. Tease Tabor would have been one of the worst corners in this draft. So all my Nate Wiggins slander, not even close to what you talk about Tease Tabor. Tease Tabor's like Kalen King.
Yeah.
That's
And
Tease Tabor.
guys, shut Steve Wild's comp picks next year too, boys. There's going to
Yep.
be some. There's going to be some comp picks next year, most likely. You would think.
Mm-hmm.
You would think. So.
And by the way, I honestly think Kalen King probably better than Tease Tabor. But
Could be.
I don't know, guys. And I saw Adam put this in Jacksonville getting Brian Thomas Jr. They got Gabe Davis. They lost Calvin Ridley. You know, they already had Christian Kirk, and they traded back. And they grabbed Brian Thomas Jr. He didn't last very long. I mean, that was a potential late first round pick, but he's off the board before the first round was over. So they got a guy and they traded back and still got him.
Yeah, I thought Jacksonville, the way that they maneuvered the draft was very smart. They're getting more talent as far as what they can do with the draft defensively too. So I don't hate it. Brian Thomas, I think he's a good fit there, but it's just one of those things where I'm wondering why. Because honestly, in my opinion, I thought Brian Thomas was going to go in the teens. So I wonder why he fell so far. I think teams maybe are a little bit more concerned about his route running and being as polished as we thought. But as far as for Trevor Lawrence, you lose Calvin Ridley and you acquire Brian Thomas Jr. I think that's music to your ears at that point.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, I saw the comment. We will be live tonight. We'll be live when the second round, starts, and we'll be live throughout, kind of previewing, discussing what the Lions are doing, and we'll just be breaking down every pick. That's basically going to be our Friday show. We're going to be live at 7, and we'll be live for how long.
It'll be another long show tonight, boys.
Yes.
I'm excited. The best part about day 2 as well, it goes just by quicker. I know, like last night, and I know it's 2 rounds. It's more rounds, so it's essentially the same amount of time. But just the fact, I was sitting there yesterday. There's just so many times with the NFL, and I get it. There's things they have to do, like Adam mentioned yesterday. There's the commercials, you have to be able to do the analysts have to be able to talk. There's a lot to it. It's just at the end of the day, sometimes like that 10 minutes, when they take that full 10 minutes and then on top of that, they go, oh, the pick is in. And Roger Goodell takes his good old sweet time to walk up there for another 5 or 10 minutes. And it's 20 minutes in between picks. And it's just an unbelievable. Maybe I saw some comments last night when we were complaining a little bit about it. People were like, oh, no, the pace is really good. The pace is good. It felt like the pace was off a little bit at times. Could have just been me. Because when you're sitting up, like you're sitting there and you see the pick is in, and me over here as the insider crunch time, I'm getting texts and I'm getting alerts sitting here. Hey, I already know the pick here for the next 5 minutes. Just let me react to it, please. That's all I ask.
Yeah, and if I'm there's got to be. This is my theory, okay? Because it took like 7 minutes for the Bears for the pick is in thing to pop up for the Bears. Like, really? We know who the pick is. There's got to – you guys think there's like a little – this is just me spitballing here. But maybe the league telling the Bears, like, wait till 2-3 minutes to put the pick in. Like, we got to make sure we kind of drag this thing out a little bit. Not make it super
If I'm
long,
the Bears, I'm telling the league I don't care who you are. We're taking our guy.
I think if you're the Bears, you're getting Caleb Williams either way. The NFL is going to make their ad revenue money off all these commercial breaks. They're going to look good off all these little pre-pick speeches where they have Roger talk for 2 minutes. It's like, oh, now we have a special guest who's going to talk for 2 minutes as well. And then Roger's going to come back on and talk for 30 seconds to get the point across. No, this is all strictly for money and to bleed and get all the juice out of the oranges you can monetarily.
To be honest, Jeff, I'm gonna go opposite of you. I don't think that the NFL asked the Bears to take long. The Bears might have done a smart thing, as they know that the number 1 pick, you don't get that a lot. And when you're actually about to draft your franchise guy who you think is going to be your guy for the next 15 years or however long these quarterbacks, some of these guys end up playing, when you have that, you get all of the marketing you can out of it. You take all the way up until the last minute until people are done talking about that number 1 overall pick. They're sitting there playing Bears stories. They're playing. All they're doing is talking about you and your new quarterback, Caleb Williams. So you're taking that. And by the way, too, on my way home last night, I watched the kind of the start of the Pat McAfee and the biggest thing is Bill Belichick was on there. Interesting human being. First of all, Bill Belichick, one of the greatest coaches of all time. He mentioned he got asked a question about this situation, like, hey, you guys take way too long, or front offices take way too long to pick. And someone asked him, like, if you guys have your guide, you guys run it in right away, or what do you guys do? He brought up a good point. Typically, outside of maybe that first pick last night, maybe pick number 2, you want to sit there and wait your full 10 minutes just in case the team calls maybe for a trade, or if you're open, unless you have your guy, like you're locked in, you want to sit there and just take every time in case, like, if there's 8 minutes left or there's 2 minutes left and a team calls you and says, hey, I've got this deal for you, you probably want to, you don't want to miss on that just because you turned your guy in 2 minutes in. So there is that kind of side of things too.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I meant more just the first pick. I mean, it started off, it was like a 7-minute wait for, but regardless, it doesn't matter. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, we'll be live later to cover the entire second and third round here on Crunch Time. It'll be kind of a replacement for our normal show. It'll still be a lot of fun. Us 3 and Michael Gentry will be there. I want to say thank you to everyone who supported us, tuned in. You guys, man, it was awesome. The amount of support we got for that show yesterday, and the people that came to Bookies, both that tuned in at home and came to Bookies Bar and Grill. I know it was a little different because a lot of our fan base is in Detroit, and they were probably at the draft, so they weren't tuning into anything. That's why a lot of the viewers now are coming after the first round. But we thank you. It was special. Shout out to Bookies Bar and Grill for having us out there. They were so smooth. It's such a great place. Well, hopefully we'll be back there. And Scotty from Questionable Teas for taking care of the fellas.
Legend.
And, Elysium Cannabis for the sponsorship as well. But boys, we'll get out of here. I want to do this Q&A stream in the morning. Talk to the people, get a chance to interact with you guys and answer some questions. We'll be live later. We'll have content posted throughout the day. We're going to record a breakdown of Terrion Arnold here in a little bit. We'll be posted not too long, give our thoughts on it. And then again, 7 o'clock, we'll be live for the second and third round. Boys.
The people, the Booner Path.
Hollywood.
We're on our way to a Super Bowl, boys. Don't forget
it. Until later, we'll catch you guys.
Love you guys.